And we are rocking and rolling. Episode 10, Vin and Dave's Destination Unknown. How are you, sir?
That has got to be some kind of milestone, right?
Well, it's a milestone, episode 10.
Right. Of course, every show with us is a milestone, so.
It is, it's very, very hard to do one show per week. Most people with podcasting, they are not able to pull off the one show per week thing, but it is absolutely mandatory, I think. And it doesn't seem like it's been 10 shows to me.
No, not at all. We're just getting started.
Dude, it's really been 10. It really doesn't seem like 10 shows. It seems like 4 shows to me.
Yeah, 2.5 months. And I'm like,
crazy. That's been fun.
Unreal. It's been so much fun. And we do have a lot of fun in store tonight for part 2.
But yes, this is part 2 of Ancient Technologies. And I'm really looking forward to, you still have quite a bit of material there.
I have actually more material than last week.
See, so this is pretty much going to be, I think this is going to be a lot of you sort of leading the way on this thing. I'm looking forward to tonight, but before we get into that, we have a wine sponsor.
We do indeed. So, Mr. Jerry French, thank you so much for the wine. Fantastic. Jerry French is on YouTube, Bitcoin Cash Maximalist, and Twitter at Bitcoin Jerry. Check the guy out. He's a pretty cool dude. And I will say, the wine that we obtained is pretty darn good. It's Aqua
Yes, Jerry.
Piedra.
So Jerry sent us quite a large amount of Bitcoin Cash. He wanted us to go out and pick out what wine we would like. He sent us, I would say, enough such that he would be the wine sponsor for into the first quarter of 2019, which is fantastic. Thank you so much, Jerry. Super generous guy, great guy. He's been a supporter of everything that I've been doing. He's a huge supporter of Bitcoin Cash, huge supporter of spreading Bitcoin for maximum financial sovereignty for the maximum number of people. Super positive guy. Always has a smile, is always very positive towards all the things going on, which is rare in the community as it is right now. So shout out to him. I think, though, what we are going to do, because while we truly, truly appreciate the generosity, we also like to be able to have other people be involved in contributing. And so we've had a few people who have been multiple week contributors of wine. Glenn has from New York has contributed twice. And so I think what we're going to do is we've got this wine for tonight. Mm-hmm. And then, so what are the 2 wines? We have 2 different ones. We have a Malbec that we're drinking now.
Yeah, the Malbec is very good. It's a 2016. So, enough of this old stuff. I want some fresh wine, But no, it's very good. It's Agua de Piedra. I've never had it before, but it's very good.
So water of the rock, water of the stone.
That's that one. Okay. And the other one is a Rodney Strong. We did have a Rodney Strong last week. I think it was last week.
I believe so, yeah.
This is the Cabernet Sauvignon from Sonoma County, 2015.
This is 2015. It's very nice. So we've got those 2, and what we'll do is Jerry sent that very, very nice amount, and we'll do this week. We'll do next week as well. So Jerry, you're going to be the 2-time sponsor. And then I think what we should do as people who are supporters of cryptocurrency for more liberty, more financial sovereignty, and for helping people around the world, especially as things are getting bad, the dominoes, it appears, may be starting to fall that has been predicted. Turkey, which is no third world country, folks, is having a currency crisis. Argentina is in the midst of a currency crisis. Venezuela has been. So, the dominoes could be starting to fall here. And so we're going to get with it. We'll do this for 2 weeks, but I think everyone involved would be better served if we could put this money to some other use. So we'll get with Jerry. We'll figure out how to do that. There are such great causes like Eat BCH and other things that are using Bitcoin Cash. So maybe we can figure out something to do in that regard. But Jerry, super generous. Thank you, man. Thank you for the wine for this week and next. And okay. So if anybody else wants to be a wine sponsor, show@vinarmani.com. You could just hit me up. We will get you information on how to do that. I think Jerry opened up the floodgates. Perhaps if you want to do it with cryptocurrency, maybe we could do it that way. If you want to do, we would love for you to actually send us wine, but if it's easier for you to do the cryptocurrency, we will take that too as a wine sponsorship. So, that's all I have to say about that. And again, thank you to Jerry French, Bitcoin Jerry. Guys, go check him out on Twitter and on YouTube.
Absolutely. I watched a few of his videos in the past couple of days. Super nice guy. And apparently does a lot of traveling. So, Jerry, if you ever find yourself up in this area of the country, let us know.
Absolutely.
We'll hang out and have a beverage.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So, last time, if you recall, I did hold up this very mysterious picture.
So for the listeners, we're looking at, I know what it looks like. It looks like a rocket.
It does.
To me.
It looks exactly like a rocket.
But it's clearly quite old. This is the writing on this looks like it's like from an illuminated manuscript. I would say this thing's 1500s. Is it 1500s?
It is.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
See, you are a man of education and taste, I got to tell you.
Well, the writing style, the calligraphic style, which looks German. I can't really. No, is that Latin?
Actually, he was the guy that wrote it.
Yeah.
He was a military engineer for the Kingdom of Hungary.
Hungary. Okay, so that's why I was like, what language is this? Hungarian is like Japanese, man. It's one of the weirdest European languages. It's not related to anything. Okay, so what is it that we're looking at here today?
Oh, but first, we did have somebody who put in a guess.
Okay.
So we did have, what's the name here? X-Fallon. No, Z-Fallon. Sorry.
Fair enough.
Oh,
yeah, don't
God.
get that wrong. Don't get the X-Fallon mixed with the Z-Fallon.
That's right. Z-Fallon 84. And he guessed correctly. This is actually from the Sibiu manuscript. So the Sibiu manuscript.
What is this?
It's 450 pages, roughly, written by Konrad Haas, who, like I said, was a military engineer for the Kingdom of Hungary in the mid-1500s.
Okay.
It contains drawings and technical data on artillery, ballistics, descriptions. Well, I don't want to say that because that'll spoil it later. Descriptions of multi-stage liquid-fueled rockets. And this is in the 1500s.
Do we know if any of these were actually ever built?
We do. And the proof actually is in the same document because he talks about a public demonstration of the technology in front of a crowd of thousands in 1555. So 1555,
Wow.
There was a multi-stage liquid-fueled rocket that was launched in Sibiu. Other than documentation, like there's no physical proof, but what physical proof would you have? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
all we have is documentation.
Right.
So the interesting thing here is the liquid fuel, right? Because
Yeah,
the
that's
Chinese,
super advanced.
it's super advanced. The Chinese have been using solid
Fuel, yeah.
for, since
Probably since the BCs, dude.
long time.
Yeah.
And so, the liquid fuel was really one of the main advancements. Another one was the delta-shaped fins, right? Which are on some of the other drawings.
Yeah.
But you'll notice also there is a bell-shaped exhaust.
Yeah.
That's modern. Like if you held this up next to a Saturn V,
It looks like that.
it
Yeah.
looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
So the design, the basic design features have not changed. And really the next time, a multi-stage liquid-fueled rocket was launched, was during the 1950s.
60s, 50s? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they were testing in the 50s.
50s, yeah.
But yeah, it's incredible that this stuff existed so far in advance. 400 years
It's crazy.
before we did it again, basically. And you're going to see that theme kind of repeated through everything we talk about tonight. It's like what happened in the meantime? Like, we got to a certain point, we had this amazing technology, and then it just was lost. It vanished. It went away. There was, maybe not necessarily an event, but there was some, cause for the lack of the technology proceeding along further.
So I ran across something this week, and I really probably should have done a little, put something together, but I want to cover this at some point. There is a theory out there, and I am forgetting exactly what this is, but that 300 years never actually existed.
Yeah.
That it's been like added on, that it's propaganda and a fiction, because they wanted to change the calendar so that it would reflect a particular date.
Yep.
The church wanted to do that. I believe it was a pope that wanted to do this, and that something like we're living, I don't remember whether it was 300 years or whether it was 500 years, but the idea was like that the Dark Ages never happened, and that the distance between Rome and the Renaissance was like not very far at all.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that theory, and it is super interesting.
I feel like we've kind of addressed that concept, even in the first episode when we were talking about, well, how do we really know that yesterday even really happened if this is the simulation, right?
Yeah, last Thursdayism. Yep.
Last Thursday, is that what it is?
Did anything? Well, last Thursdayism is kind of the name that they give to. Like, can you prove that anything happened beyond, say, last Thursday?
No, you can't.
You can't.
No,
all you've got are memories.
Yeah.
And some people don't even have those. So, there you go.
Yeah, it is interesting, the idea that knowledge can vanish. But I mean, we had the conversation about this is even a modern phenomenon. The idea that, like the anti-Iraq war protest movement, it's like, well, where was that? It didn't happen. And I feel like we have almost like the perfect storm. Orwell wrote about these concepts in 1984, like the concept of the memory hole, and it's obviously it's rhetorical, and it's a literary device that he's using, and it's so there's not a lot of subtlety to it because he's trying to get this across in a few pages. But I feel like we're in some ways reaching that point with technology to where, I mean, Alex Jones's material that was pulled off of YouTube, like when they pulled his channel, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming Alex Jones had probably had material on YouTube. I don't know that particular channel, but I'm assuming, because he was pretty savvy in terms of the platforms that he used, probably since YouTube started, which I think was 2007 or 2008. There might be content that's that old. Certainly within the last 5 to 6 years, there's every day he was there was stuff going up on that channel. The question becomes, because it was there, it's not like he was mirroring it in all of these other places. Where would you even find it? Because people don't generally mirror things that are on YouTube. They might chop them up and put them back on YouTube, but it's pretty difficult to find, if you pick just the average piece of content that's on YouTube, it's pretty difficult to find it elsewhere. I mean, we're live streaming on YouTube. Mm-hmm. I mean, but we happen to also be live streaming on Periscope, right? So, yeah, in theory, you could go back and find, but I think that even the Periscope videos, after, I don't know, maybe a month or two, they take them down. They're not, like, permanent. But if we weren't streaming on Periscope, I think it's very unlikely you could listen to us on the podcast, so that's there. But in terms of the video, I think it's very unlikely that I would be mirroring this content or you would be mirroring this content somewhere else. Why? It's on YouTube.
Right. And that's the problem. Like when the library at Alexandria was burned, so many original works and one-of-a-kind works were completely lost to history.
Yeah.
They will never be recovered. You have these centralization, this centralization of knowledge and information. And even though today we believe, the internet is distributed. It's supposed to be redundant. It's supposed to survive a nuclear attack, right?
Well,
All
that's
that kind of
just the
stuff.
network.
That's the network.
Right.
It's not the data. And if you're in IT at all, you know that the only thing that's guaranteed is survivability of the infrastructure,
Right.
not of the data itself.
Right, exactly.
And so, you know, when YouTube says, okay, you no longer exist,
Right.
you no longer exist.
You've been depersoned.
right. And so
Yeah.
5 years from now, people are going to be like, who's Alex Jones?
Right, exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly. That's it's so crazy how fast that can happen too. That you're everywhere and then nowhere. Because all those links go dead, and the Google spider, after a while, as it's spidering through, it just starts ticking it off. I mean, it's like Thanos with the glove. You just start
Yeah.
disintegrating into little pieces. And then it's just it's like you never even existed.
Yep.
It's a strange phenomenon. I think that we are in some very tenuous times with this whole. I've got the weirdest little bug. He's just floating by in front of me. It's very, very strange. No, I think we are in some of the most tenuous times because the information is so much more fragile than it's ever been. I mean, it's not books on a bookshelf.
No, it's not. And even when it was books on a bookshelf, there were book burnings and book confiscations
absolutely.
and suppression of knowledge by churches and governments. You know, that's how a lot of the esoteric knowledge came to be, was that somebody said, this knowledge needs to be preserved. How are we going to do that?
Right,
and they
right.
created a system for preserving knowledge. And, you know, some of it survived and some of it didn't. And some of it is so confusing that you really can't decipher it because all of the original context has been lost.
Well, that's like the Voynich manuscript, which I'm sure we're going to have to do a show on.
Absolutely.
Because that one's crazy. That's one of the craziest. These, when we have these sorts of I don't even know what to call them, oddities of information that pop up that are like, we know there's information here. We don't know what language it's in. We don't know what it's supposed to be. We don't know where to start with this thing. But there's clearly somebody spent a lot of time on this. And
Yeah,
the
like
person's not crazy.
The Phaistos disc. We have no idea.
I don't even know what
means.
that is.
So it's a little clay disc with a spirally inscribed like symbols, and it absolutely looks like it should be something. We have no idea what it is. Is it a calendar? We have no idea. You know. So it's there are a lot of those. There are a lot of those examples where there is a piece of knowledge, and well, I mean, if you think back to hieroglyphics, if it had not been for the Rosetta Stone, we still wouldn't have any idea what they mean.
That's right.
You know, so
That's right.
sometimes you have to find a thing that does the translation, and because nobody was left who understood the hieroglyphics, and this is the part that bugs me. It's like Egypt was around for thousands of years. People spoke the language. They carved the hieroglyphics. They knew what everything meant, but at some point, that was lost.
See,
Completely went away.
there's this weird phenomenon. I realized this when I went and I've had this happen a few times in my life, and I think many people can relate to this. You know, I used to collect baseball cards, right, when I was younger.
Sure.
And I happened to have some cards that were, well, like I had a 1982 Ricky Henderson that I had for a long time. Now, all these cards are gone now. One of the things that I had was I'm from San Bernardino, California, and for his minor league single-A career, which was basically just like a few months, I think it was one season only, Ken Griffey Jr. played for the San Bernardino Spirit.
Wow.
Which was they played at this little field, Fiscalini Field, and I remember going out there, and I had the baseball cards from this San Bernardino Spirit team. Now this, you can go look, Ken Griffey Jr., San Bernardino Spirit, somebody could go and look it up. This is an expensive card now.
Mm-hmm.
I think I may have had 5 packs of these San Bernardino Spirits. They cost nothing. You know what I mean? And there's this weird period of time where something is garbage. Mm-hmm. Where it's just like, you know, the people are the same way. That's like, oh my God, I had all these G.I. Joes or these whatever, and they're just garbage.
I had the entire run of original Star Wars.
Dude, those things.
Oh yeah, it was because I was 7 years old when it came out first time.
That's what I'm saying.
It was the perfect age, and so I had all the little plastic people, and I had like land speeder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, had I never opened the boxes,
Right. This is what I'm saying.
You know.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because you can never predict what's going to be valuable in the future.
Right.
Well, you can't accurately predict it. There's no metric for it, right? You just have to sort of guess. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate thing is that the other negative trade-off of that is you don't want to be the guessing person, because then you just wind up as a hoarder. You wind up with endless detritus.
Yep.
You know, 1,000 things that really are worth nothing to get one thing that is worth something, and a lot of wasted time and a lot of wasted space and a lot of wasted energy. And so it's hard to understand what that's going to be. And so it's like when you're walking around in Egypt and it's like, we're done with these hieroglyphics. Like, this is not important. These are not important anymore, because you're living with it.
Right. And the other thing is there was intentional
Obfuscation, yeah.
Absolutely, because the new ruler would come in
Sure.
and erase the existence of the old ruler.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so not only did you have just, you know, whatever natural causes there were to the, you know, missing knowledge, but also intentional suppression of the
Well,
knowledge.
I feel like we still do that. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's just a very normal human practice. And it's happened throughout history that, you know, you have the sort of conqueror come in and do something. I'll give you a prime example. So I've got this little office, you know, for Cointex, our little office here in Nashua, and it's in this mill building that was built in, I think, 1907 or something like that. There's mill buildings all over Nashua that are awesome, by the way. If you want to start a crypto company, I think this is a great place for it, because there's all of these really cool spaces.
And the cool thing is they've actually gutted them and like made all these super awesome like offices. They're so much character and like,
and that's
so nice.
That's the space that I'm in has basically been restored.
Yep.
Back to like the original beams, the original floors, which are gorgeous.
Yep.
Right? When it was first built, these things were super expensive, and they were like crown jewels, these buildings, you know?
The height of technology at the time.
These mill buildings, right? And so this beautiful hardwood floors and these beautiful wood columns and brick, and, you know, so the owner had told me, he's like, yeah, we had to restore all of this because they had come in and painted over all of this. Mm-hmm. They painted over the wood floors. They painted, in the 70s or whatever. And it's like, wow, because you don't know. You look at it and you're like, oh, yeah, that's not modern looking at all.
Mm. The 70s were a weird time.
Oh, God, no doubt. No doubt. That's an understatement, man. That's an understatement. Okay, so going back in history and not knowing what is going to be important, it seems that you have quite the list, it appears, of technologies. Where would you like to start today?
Well, so actually, I'd like to touch just briefly back on the Sabiu manuscript.
Let's do it.
This was written in the mid-1500s, right? And so you might think, oh, multi-stage rocket, advanced, because the guy was like, this could be used for weapons. You could stick a person on this. Now, he was suggesting in the manuscript we could put people on these and launch them.
But launch them where?
I don't know, man. It was his idea.
Maybe launch them like special forces, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but did he have an idea? Did he have an idea of a parachute or just launch them?
I don't know. Da Vinci thought up a parachute. So,
he did, yes.
Maybe. I'm not sure what the purpose of putting a person on there, other than perhaps just getting people behind enemy lines. If you could launch your people into the enemy fortification, perhaps that would do something. I don't know.
What do we know about, what was this guy's name again?
Conrad Haas.
What do we know about him besides the fact that he did this manuscript?
Not a whole lot. There's a few records as far as his military service goes, but there's not a lot of detail. So, I mean, he could have been anybody.
Wow. Clearly a genius, though. Or tapping into something.
Or building on prior work, potentially, because
You would think.
200 years before Conrad wrote this, there was another document that was written by a Chinese military officer and philosopher, Zhao Yu. He wrote the, I hope I get this right, Hulong Jing, which is translated as the Fire Dragon Manual. Now, that sounds pretty badass.
It does. It
I
sounds
love
like
the name.
rockets to me.
It does. And that work was actually based on another even older work that came before it that is referenced in the book, but the original, like that it was based on, never been found. Nobody has ever found a copy. Nobody knows who the author was. Lost to history.
Well, this is before the days of movable type. So a book like that, there would probably be maybe 2 copies if you were lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you mentioned earlier with the illustrated manuscripts, illuminated
manuscripts.
There were monks that would spend their entire lives,
Yep.
making copy after copy after copy, mostly of the Bible, but they would copy other things.
Sure.
And these were expensive. You would spend so much money.
Oh, yes.
Just to have if a family had a book in their house, they were rich.
Well, they were generally written on. So, I mean, not only did the monks prepare their own inks, for you to be a scribe, you had to know the chemistry. They were usually written on skins. Because it was meant to last, right? So the idea is like this isn't paper per se, right? And you had to know how to make that. You had to know how to bind a book. Yep. Never mind the calligraphy, never mind the art, all of that. It's amazing.
It is. It's incredible. There was an entire science around it, that built up over a very long period of time. So this earlier Chinese work is super interesting. And it's not like it's a bunch of mind-blowing technology, but just the way that they applied the technology that they had blew me away. So the previous work, so we have the Hulong Jing, which is well known. It's been translated. There's pictures on Wikipedia if you want to check it out. And then it mentions this older text, which was called the Illustrations of the Divine Fire Dragon Engines.
Rocket engines.
I know, man. It's freaking cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
So it was an instruction manual for creating these nightmarish weapons using pretty simple materials and gunpowder. Kind of like the professional version of the Anarchist Cookbook. So there's a drawing in this book called The Fire Dragon Issuing from the Water. It's the first known description of a cluster munition. So if you remember the Jericho missile from Iron Man 1,
Yep.
the beginning of the movie, he's standing there and the missile launches off. It goes behind him. It splits into 300 missiles and demolishes a mountain. That existed back in the 1300s. Wow. Not the same, right? But they had their version of it. And their version of it was actually a 2-stage rocket with a booster rocket that would automatically ignite a number of smaller rockets that were shot out of the front of the missile, which was shaped like a dragon head with an open mouth.
Whoa.
Terrifying.
Imagine that coming at you.
Yeah. So here's this freaking, dragon launching up, like this. And then it gets overhead. And then all of a sudden this swarm of little missiles comes out of its mouth. That's awesome.
Wow.
Super
impressive.
Awesome.
But would but clearly we're not talking about, I wouldn't think at this time that these things would have explosive warheads. So they had explosive warheads?
Yeah. So they could make what they called fire arrows. Okay. So fire arrows either caught things on fire or exploded on impact.
Got it.
And originally,
that's a warhead.
It is, and it was a packet.
Small one.
It was like an egg-sized little packet of gunpowder, right? But you put some flint and steel and stuff in there that will ignite on impact, create sparks, do that kind of thing. Boom, you have literally a flying bomb. The original fire arrows were actually fired by hand, so they would, create these, little packets on their arrows, and they would launch them with a bow, and boom. They then developed rocket arrows. So they have basically like, a bottle rocket.
Yeah.
Those started out being military weapons. So they would actually take the little rocket and strap it onto an arrow.
See, it's always the reverse. When the story is told, maybe that's racism? Maybe it's racism. When the story's told in the West, it's that, oh, those Chinese, they only ever use this gunpowder stuff for fireworks.
No. The very first handheld firearm, the first pistol, even though it doesn't look anything like modern pistols, it was basically a bronze tube with a little bulb shape on the end, and the bulb had like a little hole, and you would fill the bottom part with gunpowder. You would put your projectile in there, whether it was a lead ball or whatever.
Musket style.
Yeah, and you would hold on to this thing, and you would touch it with, whatever burning thing you had, and boom, and it would fire projectiles just like a gun. And that actually was, they were the inventors of the very first handheld gun. Crazy.
Yeah, and of course, when you think about it, it's like, wait, really? You think that these people had some explosive stuff and they didn't try to make weapons out of it? Are you crazy?
Oh, yeah. And this wasn't it. I mean, the stuff that was in this book was, I was like, I was so amazed. I had to write it down for the show because I'm like, people have to hear about this stuff.
Okay,
it is
let's hear it.
super
Let's hear
cool.
it.
It's not necessarily mysterious. It's just, it opens your mind to like think about, wow, like this stuff was going on back in the 1300s. I would think would be farther along by now, but that's just me. So fire arrows, we talked about those. The Divine Fire Arrow Shield, which actually was a giant box that had 100 fire arrows in it that would all launch at the same time.
So you just kind of like walked forward like with the shield. You just kind of like walked forward like this. And
they had two versions. They had one that was mounted like on the ground, and it would just fire all of them. And they had another one, which was actually, it had a different name, and it was used for like busting through a phalanx or whatever. So they would just march it forward like 3 or 4 people, and then it would just directly into people. It's crazy.
Jeez.
There was the phalanx charging fire gourd, which was actually a lance that had an explosive tip. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you run somebody and there was the Flying Cloud Thunderclap Eruptor. I love the names of these. So this is basically a cannon that fired multiple iron projectiles at once. So it wasn't one big projectile; it was a whole bunch of
grape
smaller.
shot type of thing.
Exactly. There was the Divine Ground Damaging Explosive Ambush Device.
Sounds like a mine to me.
It is a mine. It's absolutely a mine. And they had so many different kinds of mines. They had mines that could be remotely triggered. They had mines that were triggered as people walked over them.
Wow.
It was very sophisticated. I mean, shockingly sophisticated. The Marine Dragon King, which is a fully submerged version of the mine system.
So it's a sea mine.
Yeah, for blowing up boats. And the coolest thing was it had a time delay. You could set that thing for a certain amount of time, and they did it by the system was incredible. They actually used goat intestine as a waterproof sheath. So the mines would all be underwater, right? So they would pick like a shallow part of whatever the place was. They put all the mines underwater, and they would have this like goat intestine that would go up to the surface, and there would be like a little floating, bobbing, like piece of wood or cork or something on the surface, and that would have a certain length of incense. And so the incense, depending on how long the incense bar was, that's how much time you had. And so they had it down to where they were like, okay, we need this to blow up in, an hour. Okay. Sets it up, lights it, and then they leave. And then an hour later, the enemy ships come through and
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Super cool.
Wow.
Watermelon bomb. This thing, it sounds great, right? Not so much. Sounds like a drink.
Yeah.
Watermelon bomb.
Give me one of those watermelon bombs.
Yeah. So
then I'll have a Jaeger bomb. Then I'll have a sake bomb.
Cab, please. So watermelon bomb, terrifying. It actually contained a thing called fire rats. So this was, just a big watermelon-sized bomb, but the fire rats inside were actually mini rockets with hooks.
Oh.
So a bunch, like hundreds of these tiny little, skyrockets
Oh,
with
no.
hooks on them.
No. That sounds absolutely terrifying.
It sounds awful.
Oh, God.
So the divine bone dissolving fire oil bomb. I mean, oh my God, bone dissolving.
Bone
there
dissolving.
This was a fragmentation bomb. So this was a like the watermelon bomb, but instead of it holding other little rockets, it actually just held a whole bunch of like lead shot. And so that way, when it blew up, these tiny little lead shot, particles just came out and
That's horrible.
shredded people.
Fragmentation grenade, basically.
Yep. The Lotus Bunch, which was a bamboo tube that fired flaming darts. The Poison Fog Divine Smoke Eruptor fired multiple small shells that all emitted poisonous smoke. So they would have these tiny little like poison smoke things that whatever was inside them would burn and create this poisonous vapor, right? So they would light them all on fire and then they would launch them into the enemy and they would just, cover the enemy's part of the battlefield in this poisonous smoke.
So the guy who's writing this is kind of like the Raytheon of his day, right? he's kind of just like, it's crazy that this has been a profession. The sort of weapons manufacturer has been a profession for that long. Those are. Yeah, I don't think you want to go up against. It's almost one of those things that it's a deterrent in and of itself to know that an enemy would have weapons like that.
Yeah.
Because you assume it's probably this one guy who's working for this one sort of feudal lord. I don't know how high up the chain this particular guy got, but like you would definitely not want to go into battle against these types of weapons.
No, I mean, these guys, this was ingenuity on a psychopathic level.
Yeah.
I mean, this is crazy. Just that they're going to name something a, bone disintegrator. I mean, holy crap. So, I mean, the weapons are, there's
That's
a lot
part
more.
of its charm.
I know. Oh my God. One cool thing, the Divine Flying Fire Crow was actually an aerodynamic winged rocket bomb. So it's like a rocket propelled glider. So they had wings. So they understood enough about aerodynamics that they could stick rockets onto this thing that had wings, put a bomb on it and launch it. And it would fly, a certain distance, hundreds of yards or whatever, and boom, blow up. It's super cool.
Wow. And this is what year we're thinking about this thing?
1300s. During the 1300s.
1300s. Yeah, that's impressive.
It blows me away. It absolutely blows me away because,
No pun intended.
Well, exactly. So I grew up, in an age where kids didn't ask questions in school and the, school teacher would tell you something, that may turn out to be wrong later or whatever. It's like that old story about, the teacher having the argument with the student because she said, a kilometer is longer than a mile. And the student's like, no, it's not. And she's like, you've got detention.
Right. Right.
So it was that sort of environment, right? And so things were presented very much as unquestionable facts. So when you're told that, the Chinese invented gunpowder, but they really didn't do that much with it. It was really the white man that really made it good. And then later you find out that it's a good thing we didn't have a war with them because we would have gotten wiped out.
Yeah. I mean, well, they had been going to war and they had been studying war for a long time. It helps to have an unbroken culture.
Yeah.
It really, really does.
Well, and I think that's also part of the problem that we have with...
I'm going to get through that glass really fast, bro.
All right. We are going to prepare for the next one.
Yeah, prepare for the next one, for sure.
So,
what is the second that we're going? So
the second one was Rodney Strong.
So we just hit the Malbec?
Right. We did the Malbec first because Malbecs tend to be lighter. Right?
And it is lighter. It's a good wine. I like
it's a good wine. It's very drinkable. It's very approachable. It's a light wine. Now, this next one, I'm hoping, it's got a little bit more kick.
Now, did we have the same Rodney Strong?
I don't think so. I think it was a
week?
different Rodney Strong.
It was a Pinot?
No.
Was it a cab?
I'm pretty sure it was a cab. Yeah, it was a cab, but it was a different cab.
Was that from Nashville Liberty?
Yes.
Okay.
Great bunch of people.
Yeah, I was just on Sunday. I was just at the dinner And it was great. It was great. Tons of people. New people moving. New movers, man.
Yeah. It's so exciting. Like, we have this, we're almost building our own, like, culture here,
I don't think it's almost. I think it's really happening.
It is really happening. And, one thing, that you said on the last Vin Armani show,
Yes.
right? And you were talking about how, you came here and you're so accustomed to people like arguing about, oh, this crypto is better than that crypto. And, this technical detail and that technical detail. And then you go to one of our farmers markets and people are literally buying food with crypto and nobody's arguing because everybody's taking all the crypto.
That's
like you
right.
could pay with
Yeah.
Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Dash,
Yep.
Ethereum, whatever you got, they'll take
it. Yeah.
And nobody's going to like look down their nose at you because you used Ethereum. I mean, it's all good. And we're all here to support each other, not just in crypto, right? I mean, we also have people that are, here for lots of other freedom related reasons. But yeah, so I thought that was a pretty special, like, 15-minute segment on your show that was like, wow, this is what makes it real. This is the real thing.
Well, I think there's something. Yeah, that real is what it comes down to. But I think that even the way that this show formed is testament to the fact that there's something about people now who are in search of the type of information and the type of knowledge that we are. And I really do feel like the reason to look to the past, the reason that any of the stuff that we talk about matters, the reason why having that sort of having that historical context, the reason why it matters is to move forward.
Yep.
There's enough to just like sit now and just sit in the present, but I do feel like what's happening here is like it's so far into the future of where things can be and where things should be, but of course there's the danger that if we're not also looking to the past at the same time, then there are so many pitfalls, because it's like you're just going to repeat the same things over and over and over again, and it's like one of those things is, hey, whatever it is we're doing here, I feel like it's very important that it doesn't get lost.
Right.
The
loss of knowledge has plagued mankind since the beginning. I would say that's one of the biggest tragedies ever, is that we keep starting over. People think of, science, it's been this one long unbroken chain of more knowledge. It hasn't. Science has took some pretty serious detours over the years. And, and is it because of religion? Is it because of government? Is it because of bad science? It's a lot of things.
I think it's because of the thing that you said about eventually the A's start hiring B's and then the B's start hiring C's. Like, I feel like that's what it is. I feel like we have, as of yet, and I still don't see it today, I feel like we keep trying to, and we've talked about it on this show, there's been this continuous search for how do we pass down knowledge to the right people who will actually value it. Right. I mean, we even had this conversation. It's kind of the conversation that we were having right before we came on air, right? That it's like, it's so difficult and it's so hard to navigate because you need to pass the knowledge on.
Right.
And it's valuable. How do you judge whether or not someone else is going to think it's that valuable and pass it on, not as some sort of procedure, right? Which is where I think the university system is at this point.
Right.
It
doesn't. Okay, so we actually started having this conversation, and we didn't get to dig into it that much, but
let's do it now. It's destination unknown. We don't know where the hell we're going to go.
I know. Left turn. So we were talking about, and I don't remember if this was last show or 2 shows ago, but it was fairly recently. We were talking about knowledge and how knowledge gets passed on and when knowledge gets passed on and the types of people who knowledge gets passed on to. And there is a level of understanding that you can get some people to have. And we were talking about this in the context of the, Egyptian high priests and, like, how do you identify the star students, right? And you're going to have those students who just want to learn enough to get by. You're also going to have those students who are genuinely interested and quite good, but the penny's never going to drop. It's never going to quite click. Right.
Yeah.
And those are the B's, right?
Yeah.
And then you have your stars, and those are the people who are going to challenge you. Those are the people who are going to make you think in different ways. And those are the people that we're trying to identify and that we need to identify in order to keep knowledge actually growing and, becoming what it should. Like the Dark Ages and the periods of time where we just have lost vast quantities of legitimate knowledge. And we're not talking about, superstition and hocus pocus. We're talking about actual scientific knowledge. A lot of times that was in the form of alchemy. There really at the time was no difference between alchemy and chemistry. Alchemists are actually responsible for a ton of the things that I've got listed here. And today, when you look at it, you're like, oh, well, that's, this chemical and this chemical, and here's the formula.
Right,
and blah, blah, blah.
right.
Back in the day, it was alchemy. Even though it's exactly the same, they called it alchemy versus
You take it
chemistry.
for granted now, though.
Yeah, today you take it for granted. And that you can mix, Coke with Mentos and get explosions, that would have been magic, back in the day.
Coke and Mentos would have been magic back in the day. Let's be real.
Either one would be total magic.
Presenting a can of Coke with the red and the Coke.
Yeah.
And the psh when you open it.
Yeah.
Even shaking it and psh.
Oh, the king would have had you beheaded, man. I mean, that's dangerous.
What sorcery is this, sir? What sorcery is this? God forbid the Mentos. Oh.
Yeah.
What are these? Oh, that actually the taste itself probably would have been too much for them.
Imagine taking them some fresh French fries. Can you imagine? Their minds would have been blown
minds. And I think that but I think that may be exactly it. There's that saying. Let me see if I can get this right. Hard times make good men. Good men make easy times. Easy times make soft men. Soft men make hard times.
I like that. That's good.
And I feel like
that should be a t-shirt. It
should be. I feel like that's sort of what we're talking about, is that I think that you reach a point, and that's maybe what they would call the decadent age, right? It's the fall of a civilization. Perhaps what it really is that the decadent age is that magic is all around you. The hard work of your ancestors to make this all possible.
Yeah.
And you lose the wonder. You lose you don't value it anymore. Mm-hmm. And so when it starts to go away, you allow it to happen.
Well, you get lazy. You don't maintain it, And
it's Alex Jones getting banned.
Yeah.
It's that regardless of how you feel about the guy, it's to say, whoa, hold on. There's a lot of work and information that was put into all of this. You're just going to just let somebody just delete it?
Yeah, the push of a button. It used to be harder.
Yeah, that doesn't bother you at all that this individual put in. I mean, even if it's 80% crap, even if it's 80% pure water filtration and super male vitality sales, even if it's that,
they're making the frogs gay.
The frogs are gay. The globalists have got. There's water. The globalists have, ladies and gentlemen, the globalists are making the frogs gay.
I'm a man. I eat steak.
Even if it's 80% that, there's Alex Jones would on occasion have a moment of clarity and would say some shit where it was like, yeah, Alex, like, okay, good, that's legit. Not only that, there was some real work put into those broadcasts.
Yeah.
If for nothing else than to just have a record of the time. Like, see, because that's another thing. Mm-hmm. There's going to come a time when Alex Jones's feelings about Donald Trump and about Hillary Clinton and all of this are going to be so far into the past that there's no emotional attachment for the people there, right? Just like we're talking about these weapons in this book. I'm sure the enemies of this particular individual would love to have had him wiped out of history and had this book removed completely because it was killing their people and what a terrible person he is for having this, and he's some sort of psychopath trying to, he's ruining war for everybody, and it's a genocide and all of this. But there's going to come a time when the time we live in right now is history.
Right.
You just wiped out history. Like, you just wiped out the type of thing that actually, like, Alex Jones's content is actually will be worthy of study in 100 years.
Sure. I mean, it's worthy of study now.
Right.
Just because people need, okay, so a couple of examples. One, Childish Gambino's This Is America.
Oh, yeah. Love it. Great video.
That video is so packed full of symbolism and meaning that you need to watch it a few times.
Oh, you could watch it 20 times and still not pull it all out.
I mean, there should be, college level papers written on this thing.
I'm sure there will be. But him in particular, I think that he's quite acceptable to most college professors. I think him in particular, I'm sure there will be papers written on him for sure. On that video for sure.
Right. But it's a work that is worthy of analysis. You may not agree with it.
Right.
You may not, it may not vibe with you, whatever. That's okay.
Right.
But it is worthy of analysis. And that's exactly the same with Alex Jones. His stuff was worthy of analysis, whether it was true or false or misguided or, just the guts that it took to go and expose the Bilderbergers and the Trilaterals and all that and get actual film footage. Bohemian Grove. Nobody had actually seen this stuff. And he went and got it, and that took guts, and, now it's gone. And I'm like, that is a loss, because there are a lot of people who are going to say, Bohemian Grove, a total mythology. That's completely not true.
Oh, yeah, it's memory hole. We're talking, it's just getting memory hold.
Yeah.
And then they started also taking down people's streams when people would even play clips of his show.
Yep. Facebook also recently got in trouble just in the last couple of days for taking down pictures of naked children. Now, you wouldn't think this would be a problem, but those naked children were actually starving during the Nazi occupation.
Oh, wow.
And they were being used to show the effect that the Nazis had on the Jews. And these were poor, starving, naked, emaciated children.
See, and they did that with the Napalm Girl photo, too.
The Napalm Girl photo, same kind of thing. When you have an important piece of information that is being blocked by, for stupid reasons, like that photo of those starving children should be there forever to remind us this is not how we behave. We do not do this.
Well, I think that this is the Ken Griffey Jr. baseball card. We get caught up in the time to think that where we are now is some sort of frivolous moment, right?
Nobody pays attention to the moment. Nobody lives in the moment.
Well, but we also don't think about the moment as it is going to appear to our descendants.
Sure.
And that our descendants might actually care.
Right.
Like that what we're doing now, our descendants will care. You know, like I was having a conversation with another Free Stater. He was talking to me and sent me this great article about Western Union and the history of Western Union. You know,
oh my God,
and super interesting stuff.
Super cool.
And it was in the context of course, a crypto conversation, but you know, how they got into the money wiring business, and you know, of course, the Knights Templar came up, that they were basically like copying the Knights Templar because they could beat the Pony Express. Which was how most people would be sending money at the time. They could beat the Pony Express with their wire, but I guess Bell had come to them and said, "Hey, you know, you could actually do like voice. I could set voice up over these wires." And they were like, "The fuck we need voice for? Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, who would want to listen to somebody go, well, I blew it there because you certainly use it now, Western Union, but." And then they went bankrupt, and they got but it's, you know, when you're in that moment, it doesn't mean anything because you're there. You know, though I remember a night at Fiscalini Field, Ken Griffey Jr., I think it was his second game as a professional, you know, someone who's going to go on to become a Hall of Fame player, playing left field. I'm sitting in left field. This dude, like, jumps damn near into the stands, catches this foul fly ball, and it's just like he's diving all over the place. He's hitting home runs, and everybody knew, like, and because his father was in the league, you know what I mean? So it was like everybody knew, like, oh, this is Ken Griffey's son. Like, Ken Griffey, is an amazing player. But you're there in the moment, and it's cool, and the spirits win, and it's great, and you don't think like, wow, this is somebody who's gonna have entire cities wearing his jersey, and you're here with like 2,000 people in these little stands, like watching him get his start, but it doesn't mean anything at that moment.
Well, you can't put it into context, and you don't have perspective, and that's the other huge part of this is the perspective doesn't exist at the time. Imagine knowing Michael Jordan when he was in high school.
That's what I'm saying.
He was phenomenal in high school, but you know, like the other players, they were just like, oh, well, of course he's the best player.
That's just Mike Jordan. Like I went to kindergarten with that dude. You know what I'm saying?
He dated my sister. Come on.
Exactly. It is such a weird. It's so, at the same time, you don't want to. Like, how do you manage that balance? I think the only way that you can manage the balance is just to leave the opportunity for the material to stay. Like, don't try to destroy the material. And I think that if you are a custodian, which is what I think that Facebook and YouTube and Google, I know that Google and who's not sending somebody? I think Apple's not sending. Oh no, Google's not. Apple and Facebook, I guess, are gonna sit down in front of Congress. I think what's going to be lost in that, you know, yet again, is this idea that, listen, you're a private company. You could do whatever you want to do. But you've also stepped into the role of being a custodian of records of this moment in time.
Right.
That's who you are. That's what you are. And you're making plenty of money playing that role.
Yep.
And so by censoring, by removing things, by memory holding things, who you're really hurting is you're hurting future generations who are going to look back and who are going to look back at you with shame.
Yeah.
They're going to look back at you like barbarians that came into some city and razed some historic city and razed it to the ground, like the people who burnt down the library at Alexandria. They're going to look at you like that.
Well, to me, they're Nazi book burners.
Yes, exactly.
They are. So here again, they're going before Congress to testify to Congress, a branch of government, about a problem that government created in the first place.
Exactly.
This is the vicious cycle that we get into and that people don't realize that they're in, because in their mind, they have had this false dichotomy created that, oh, we have the corporations over here and we have the government over here. Mind-blowing fact, corporations wouldn't exist without government.
Well, corporations are a government program.
It is. It's a government thing. I had a guy, the last election cycle, it was 2 years ago, guy comes up to my door, knocks on the door, which is always a great opportunity for me because I get to talk to somebody who's running for office. Is fantastic.
Which is something, if you don't know about New Hampshire, that is, you will get to talk to people who are running for office.
Absolutely, because we have over 400 people in our state house, and it is the largest state legislature in the country.
But there's under 2 million people in the entire state.
Yeah, per capita, highest number of people. It's phenomenal. So you do genuinely get to know the people that are sitting there in Concord, New Hampshire. So I get these people that come, they either call me on the phone, I'll talk to them on the phone, or they come up to my door. That's even better because, I walk out in my underwear and because I'm working, I work from home. So, I wear my underwear. So I do, what's up, and, guys like, he seemed, so my initial impression was, older guy, probably in his 50s, gray hair, looked very, labor union-y. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and
yes.
Seemed like a nice guy, right? But seems like he had a very, limited experience as far as what he had been exposed to ideologically during his life.
Right. Sort of like mild socialist.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So, he comes to the door and he's like, hey, how you doing? I'm running for office, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. What are your issues? And so he starts like talking about how evil and horrible corporations are, and our only savior from these corporations is the government. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Did you know that without the government, we wouldn't have the corporations?
Right.
And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, think about it. If you create a corporation, you register with the government. The government provides you a veil of legal insulation so that you're not, you're not exposed to the liability if you do something wrong. Like the first guy that invented a handgun and somebody used it, and killed somebody, and then somebody sued this guy, he would have gone out of business.
That's right.
Now, admittedly, we would all currently be living like hobbits. Right. But I'm cool with that. I'd be down. I'm like, hey, I got my hobbit hole. I got my little, briar patch, whatever. I'm good. I got, beer, bread, hobbits, little short fat women. It's awesome, dude. I mean, that's the life.
I think the interesting thing about it, though, is that, I think we get these bridge technologies, right? Like, I think that the corporation and the idea of the corporation is a technology. And I think that it was perhaps necessary at a certain time. And I think that it was so that we could have economies of scale because people were far away. You would need to service those types of people. You would need to grow these large centralized organizations to be able to do that because of a lack of information. So it's like, look, we have limited information. Not even everybody can read, but we got to get goods out to those people. And like, how are we going to do that? It's this limited technocratic elite that can do that. And we need to create a centralized organization that can support them in doing that. We've gone way beyond that now.
Yeah.
We're at a point now where we really can re-embrace a sort of a decentralized ideal with all of those individuals who are these decentralized actors sharing information with each other about how to do whatever it is that they do, so that you don't have to have these centralized organizations. I think that now we can move beyond the corporation. I do think so.
I think we have to. We have to. I love the interplanetary file system. I think that's
where our podcasts are hosted. They're hosted on IPFS.
Yep, I love that. It's it's like a more digestible version of the dark web.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So yeah, I think that it is going to be very much up to private individuals and individual organizations to preserve knowledge and make sure that the knowledge that needs to be preserved is preserved. There's a lot of stuff that people, like when I was a kid, like I could go to the library and there was a book that a bunch of us seventh grade boys used to like to read. It's not what you're thinking.
Was it The Joy of Sex?
No. I mean, there were also those, but I mean, we had the Sears catalog for that. I mean, there was an entire underwear section right there.
Yes, exactly. Sure.
So, yeah, young people won't understand catalog. It was this thick, seriously, and it would come in the mail, and you could literally look through it, and there were paper thin, like, okay, paper thin is kind of like oxymoron. Super thin pages, and you would like look.
Oh, the pages were so thin,
super thin. But anyway, so there was a book that was all about like natural drugs that would get you totally high,
like banana skins, and
and nutmeg,
yeah,
like there were all these things that would get you totally high, and so then we would experiment and get sick and throw up, and
absolutely.
It was terrible. But that was in the library. Try to find it now.
Right.
Like there's stuff you cannot find in the library today.
Right.
That was in the library when I was a kid. It's not there anymore. Is it just because people lost interest? They didn't check it out anymore?
Do you think that that's perhaps because people have become more literate? I often think that that's what it is. I often think that, and like I think we're seeing it in crypto now as well, is that, and Chris DeRose, who's actually coming up here in August to do a thing with myself and Daniel Krawitz, he's been speaking about it lately, is that, in Bitcoin, whether it was from a libertarian standpoint or whether it was from a technical standpoint, up until very recently, the only people who were involved with Bitcoin and with cryptocurrency were what you would call literate people. Right. So they could either talk to you about economics, they could talk to you about sound money, and that's why they were involved, or they could talk to you about the technology and the code and where that stood in terms of history, and sometimes a little bit of both. You would love to have that. That's great when you get an individual like that. And now it's opened up to a point where the non-literate start to come in.
Right. And I remember when I first was exposed to Bitcoin, I thought it was a giant pain in the ass. And I was an IT guy who was accustomed to, writing scripts, doing programming. And I thought it was a pain in the ass. And so getting normal people into it, it was going to take somebody to come along and write a Coinomi wallet or whatever. You know what I mean? There had to be...
and I guess in some ways I'm as guilty as anybody for bringing the illiterate in. I mean, like with Cointext, it's like you can just text somebody money. That's as illiterate as you can.
That's the most magical thing I've seen in a while. I mean, that's freaking cool.
We've got our Spain beta testers going because we just released in Spanish, and so we're releasing Spanish language countries, a whole bunch of countries in the next couple months. So we just got one of our beta testers sent something back, and he's like, yo, here are pictures of, this is my 75-year-old mother's clamshell phone.
Wow, nice.
I sent her Bitcoin Cash. Here it is, and she was able to send it back to me.
That's awesome.
And without internet.
That means Captain America could do it too.
Yeah, her phone doesn't even have internet, right? No. It's just a old clamshell phone. And this is the trade-off, right? Is that it's like, okay, yes, we need those people to be in if this thing is going to move forward. But those people being in, it opens up a whole new can of worms.
Sure.
A whole new can of worms, because how do they even start approaching this knowledge? And I think that it's that gets to sort of what we're talking about the easy times. That you said like, oh, well, it was a pain in the ass. Right. Hard times make strong men. This like, because it was a pain in the ass, all of the people who were in it when it was a pain in the ass were strong individuals who were there for a reason.
Yeah.
And when it's easy, it's not just going to be that.
No. And, in my own personal experience, like I'd become aware of Bitcoin, I don't know, probably within a year or so of when it was created. And, I set it up, it took my CPU to 100%. I shut it off. I'm like, screw this. This is terrible.
That's a lot of people's experience with the client.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't need that. Especially because I was at work at the time. But, what happened later, was I got back into it. I got back into looking at what is crypto? What are we really talking about here? What is the technology? And I thought, you know what? Dave Stradamus says Litecoin is going to be the thing. So I'm going to set up a Litecoin miner. And I did. I literally spec'd out, built a machine, had, 2 graphics cards. I did all the, modifications, set up the software, did the thing. And I was mining, it was awesome. I mined for 3 months or something. Cost me $400 in electricity. It was a very warm machine.
Yeah.
But I did actually net a lot of Litecoin out of it, which was great. And then I later used that to fund my daughter's wedding, which was also great.
Yes,
right?
fantastic.
I mean, you got to use the thing.
Of course.
So I mined all the money, well, some of the money, a good chunk of the money for my daughter's wedding. A lot of fun. And for me, it was 90% an intellectual experiment. Of
course.
I was playing, I'm like, I want to do this thing and I want to build a computer and I want to, mine these things. And then I want to, do something with it at some point. So that was fun and it was an experiment. And you have people who are hobbyists and who get it enough to do the thing. And then you have the people that are super into it and they really get it at a deeper level, and those are the people that are going to make the most impact and, really take it further. I'm never going to take it further because I was a hobbyist. Right. Somebody who's, neck deep in the code and actually doing the work and in it every day, they're the ones that are going to take it further. And the people that actually get the magic inside of it. And that's, the other part of what I was going to bring up about finding the people to take the knowledge forward.
Yeah.
Is the people that actually find the nugget of magic inside where then they can mentally manipulate that and go, okay, well, if I want this other thing to happen, then I have to do this other thing over here and take these other steps, whatever. Because if you teach somebody a set of steps, right? It's like, okay, if I go to somebody and I teach them to solve a Rubik's Cube, and I'm like, okay, you get the Rubik's Cube, here's what you got to do. And you just kind of okay, well, I know step 1, get all these over here. Step 2, get all these over here. You never internalize what's actually happening on the cube.
Right.
It's only when you internalize what happens in the cube that you can actually solve it for real. And then you can create new ways to solve it.
Right.
And that's the ultimate problem, is creating new ways to solve the problems that not only exist now, but are going to come up in the future that are going to be a lot harder.
It's always the same problems over and over and over because because it's human beings, right? All we're doing is we're just getting more and more efficient at solving the same problems, but it's not as though these problems ever go away.
Yeah.
We stand on the shoulders of giants. That's always what it is. We're standing on this next person's shoulders. And I feel like perhaps, the answer to why do these technologies get lost? Perhaps the answer is that we forget that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Perhaps we reach a point where it's a decadent age, which we're clearly in now, where we look around and it's, we take for granted the fact that we can drink wine of this quality. I mean, human beings have been drinking wine since Noah, if you're going to go by biblical references, right? That's the first thing after the flood. He plants a vineyard, makes wine, and gets drunk.
I would have done the same thing.
I would have too, dude. You survived that flood. You made that boat. You need a drink after that. Man. I mean, but we take for granted that we could have this caliber and quality of wine, but this was a delicacy. There were religions based upon the drinking of wine. And the fact that we can just go down and expect that, yeah, it'll be there, and expect that like this electricity is going to run through, and that I'm going to go and turn on and there's water and I'm going to turn it on, and it's not, I mean, it wasn't so very long ago that it's like, wow, we got running water in our house. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That was not that long ago when that would have been like, hallelujah.
My mom was excited to have an indoor toilet.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. That I think that when you reach a point where these things get taken for granted, that they have to go away in some way. Although I don't know if we haven't reached a point now. And I don't know if this had ever existed before. Perhaps it had, but it hasn't in what we know as history, where we've got a globally connected and therefore very redundant system. And so maybe it doesn't just vanish, but maybe it vanishes in other ways. Maybe it vanishes in terms of choice, in terms of innovation. Maybe innovation just stops.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's like, well, we're sitting at this point. You know, it's like people are like, oh, I thought we would have had flying cars by now. There's something there, right? There's something there that my mother's generation, and they don't talk about it very much anymore, but like with that nuclear generation, that baby boomer generation, they really thought that they'd be living on the moon by now.
Sure.
At least their parents did.
Yeah. And they would have been. And that's the thing, is like, if you look back, right, like, let's take another example here from something a little further back, maybe. Here we go. Yeah, this is actually, it's not super far back, but it's actually a really good example of why the hell this didn't survive.
Go.
Right?
Yeah. I want to hear
The Lycurgus Cup. Have you heard about the Lycurgus Cup?
This sounds a little familiar, but go ahead. Tell me about this.
1,600 years ago.
Okay.
Back in 400 AD, back when I was a young man.
Not when I'm just taking a drink of water, dude. I'm going to do a spit take. Come on, man.
So this was actually a cup that was found. It's a Roman chalice, and they noticed, like, when they're like, oh, this is a very nice Roman chalice. It's green, right? So they took it into the museum, cleaned it up, and they noticed that, oh, that's weird. It actually changes color. Like, you know, if we're looking at it from the front and there's not a source of light in the back, it's green. But if we hold it up to the light, you know, if we put light behind it, it's red.
Is this some sort of amber or something? What is it? What's
So
it made of?
weird, right? And they're like, oh, I have no idea what that is, right? So they, it has really been unexplained for a long time. Now it has been explained.
Okay.
And it gets so much weirder.
All right.
It's awesome.
I'm ready.
So, what had happened? What had happened was...
What had happened was... What had happened was...
I swear, officer, I was just standing there.
What had happened was...
So, the Roman artisans at the time had actually used a form of nanotechnology.
What?
Yes, to create the effect. Not an accident. This was not contamination. There is very good reason to know, or to believe, that they knew exactly what they were doing. They impregnated the glass with particles of silver and gold that were ground down to a size of 50 nanometers.
How did they do that?
We're not entirely sure, but the particles of silver and gold that are embedded, impregnated in the glass, very consistent. You know, it's there for a purpose, and I'm going to tell you what that is.
Go.
So, just recently in 2013, all right? So, this was in use, okay, back in 400 AD. It took us until 2013 to figure out what it could do. It's been sitting in a museum forever, for a very long time, right? People had only ever looked at it with nothing in it. So they're like, oh, it's green or it's red. It's a light trick. It's like, it's cute, right? No, 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 no. So 2013, scientists finally duplicated the nanoparticle technique. They were able to impregnate their own goblet, and they started putting stuff in it. And what they found was that the color change would be different depending on what kind of substance was inside the goblet. So they would have this chalice. If they put oil in it, it would be one color. If they put salt water in it, it would be a different color. Whatever, the chemical was, alcohol would be a different color. The various colors would come through. So what this seems to have been used by prominent Roman leaders at the time as an
Poison
immediate
test.
visual detection of poison. They could detect assassination attempts instantly. So, they're having their wine with dinner, right? Dude comes up, fills it up with wine. They hold it up.
Not the right color.
Or maybe that's where the toast came from.
Right.
There's the
Here
one
it
toast.
is, yeah.
Yeah. There's the one about, you put a little bit of your liquid in everybody else's cup. There's that. But then what about this where you just hold it up in the air?
Hold it up. Yeah, yeah. You're looking.
So looking at the light coming through. Now, if you know that there's a specific color that comes through that cup because your wine is,
Right.
Okay, now it's going to be like a purple or whatever. And then one night you hold it up and it's like a green or it's a blue or something like that. You're going, there's something wrong with this wine.
And the thing, what's interesting about, I like that idea for the toast, man, because you wouldn't, if you had such a technology.
Yep.
You absolutely would not tell anybody that you had it, right?
Not at all.
So it would be like, okay, he's poured the wine. Well, before we drink, let me toast. And then you're going to say something. You're going to be like, I just want to say to everybody, and the whole time you're looking. And then if it goes the wrong color, then you're scheming on what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Oh, and I want to welcome my good friend over here.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Yep. And I want to tell you a little bit about this good friend of mine over here, right? That's amazing, actually.
And you hit the button with the magic spike that comes
right,
up through
exactly,
the chair.
exactly.
Yeah. But no, this is a real thing. I mean, people can do the research on their own. This is a very real thing. 2013, they published the paper on this. And we are actually reinventing this technology to be used for our own, lethal substance detection.
Interesting.
Because it is actually, that nanoparticle technique is 100 times more sensitive than what we had previously. So it's a vast improvement over our current technology.
Wow.
Why did it disappear? Right? Why are we not all drinking out of poison detecting cups? Maybe because we're not all trying to get assassinated.
That one I get, because that one is a secret technology.
Well, sure.
Right? That one is one that you would not share. Mm-hmm. Which is the, I guess there's the danger. I mean, I've got this little saying that it's, it's only valuable that other people believe what I believe if what I believe is wrong, if what I believe is false, right? So the idea is something like, if I believe that, in my backyard...
This was in the Ascendant Project.
Yes. If I believe that in my backyard there's a chest full of gold buried, old Spanish gold that was buried there by some pilgrim who had brought it over back in the, 1700, early 1700s, late 1600s, it's not very valuable for other people to believe that as well, if it's really there.
Sure.
If it's not there, perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. Same thing goes for the pin to my ATM card, or the passwords to whatever it is that I've, any of my accounts or anything like that. It's very useful that other people don't believe what I believe in that regard.
Sure, I use the same password for everything.
Oh,
1,
Jesus, don't do that.
2, 3, 4, 5. Come on, Spaceballs. Come on, man. Spaceballs. It's a great reference. All right.
It's so I think that you necessarily would have technologies that would get lost for that reason. That would be very valuable technologies that some person would get a hold of. Now, this happens to be the exact opposite of how a patent works, though.
Sure.
Because a patent, in order to receive the patent, you have to make the technology fully public.
Right.
But then it's the violent coercion of the state
Right.
that is going to prevent other people from using it, which seems a travesty to me. The idea that, oh, here you have this idea, and oh, here you're willing to make it public, and yet nobody else can use it. Nobody else can build on it. Nobody else can do anything with it.
Well, and here's the logical, I guess, disconnect, that people have with this. They think, oh, I've had this original idea, I got to get it patented so I can be the only one that does it. Well, I'll clue you in on a secret. If you're doing it better than everybody else, because currently you're the only one doing it, then you have a market. And if you continue to do it better than everybody else, you'll continue to have a market. It's only when people who are afraid that somebody else is going to come along and do it better than they do that there's a problem. Like, honest to God, Louis Vuitton still makes fucking $5,000 purses.
Oh, yes.
Why? Because they sell like hotcakes, and they're pretty good.
But
right?
there are fakes out there.
Sure, there's fakes, but Louis Vuitton is still in business
That's right.
and still making $5,000 a purse.
Well, and one thing about technology, when you're talking about it's I think there's a difference in sort of things like copyright, things like trademarks. There's a big difference, I think, when you talk about technology, because first of all, there's so few people who could infringe on most patents, right? Especially when you're talking about like sort of high technology, because it's not just infringe on it. You've got to infringe on it, and then you've got to do the marketing and the sale, because you still got to sell it.
Sure.
I mean, it's not just like you're just going to do it in your garage. It's not about doing it in your garage. It's about selling it.
Right.
And so the idea that, at any given time, for those individuals, it's a different thing if it's like the patent trolling of a major corporation, right? Which they basically patent troll each other.
They do.
That's basically what they're doing. Samsung and Apple are going back and forth, and Uber and Google are going back and forth.
Lawyers that spend their entire career doing nothing.
That's
but
all
patent trolling.
Patent trolling.
There's money in it.
But it's the individuals, those sort of individual entrepreneurs who are doing projects where patents are just incredibly damaging to our entire society. Like the individuals who, especially when you're talking about patents and it's patent trolling. So it's like, so somebody's sitting on a patent and not doing anything with it, except just preventing other people from doing something with it.
Oh, it's like those damn website squatters. Oh, those domain
Well,
squatters.
that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you're not doing anything with this. What would I want to do with it? What would I want to do with it? Well, I would want to create goods and services that made people's lives better. What are you doing with it? Absolutely nothing except waiting for me to do something. And there's a special kind of evil in that. No, seriously. Seriously, there's a special kind of evil, because the only way that you can make money is by, if it's not through state coercion, is by creating goods and services that make people's lives better.
Sure.
And so somebody who is sitting on a patent and preventing others from using it, from making money, is basically preventing people from making people's lives better.
Yep.
But I feel like that's yet another way. It's yet another way that knowledge gets lost. Because the individuals who are doing, because I mean, well, I'm listed as the inventor on a patent, but I no longer have any rights to it because it was signed off to the company that I was, working for at the time, and that company is now gone, but the patent portfolio still belongs to however it carried on, however it was sold to, and it's like, but nobody's using it. Nobody's doing anything with it. And if you think of every inventor on a patent who was working for a corporation at the time, who signed off the rights on that thing, And that would have been the exact person that would have perhaps carried on that idea. But for me, like, it was at the moment that I signed that over, I was also like, just psychologically for me, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm done working on that now.
Right. Yeah.
I guess I'm not going to work on that anymore now, because if I was to work on it and start up a company, I'd just be sued by,
Sure.
the company that I signed over the rights to that to.
There's no incentive. You have no incentive. You actually have a disincentive to continue working on it. You shouldn't continue working on it because you don't have the rights to it.
Yeah, but I think that these are the things these are the unseen consequences of, getting to a point where we aren't in our culture thinking about what does this moment mean to the future.
Yeah, if we're going to bring it back around to that, absolutely. And it's very, very difficult for people to, I've experienced this multiple times in my life where I've been living through a moment in time where something special was happening. Michael Jordan was playing, there was a thing. Stone Cold Steve Austin was, rising up the ranks. The Rock was on television every single week.
Yep.
Surprisingly enough, kids, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson,
the next president of the United States.
Could be.
I think he is going to be.
So Dwayne Johnson was actually, he's a pro wrestler, or was a pro wrestler / sports entertainer. It was phenomenal. Literally one of the most entertaining people, and he
still is, by the way. He still is one of the most entertaining. He was just on. I know this because I was at the gym today. It's funny that you bring him up. He was just on this morning with. That show keeps changing. Now who is it? Ryan Seacrest and Kelly Ripa. He was just on the show. Yeah. And I remember, and I'm at the gym, and the sound's not on the TVs, but I saw him go up there, and he was coming out and working the crowd as he came out and the whole nine, and he gets up there, and I was like, who could not? I was like, if this guy ran for president, he would win, because who doesn't like The Rock?
Right.
How could you not like this guy?
And now that we've already paved the way with Trump, it's like The Rock would be like,
on every side.
Yeah.
Red America and blue America. Oh, The Rock? Oh, instantly. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We are all about The Rock.
Yeah, because even the Democrats are going to be like, he's kind of a Republican, but man, it's The Rock.
It's The Rock. Well, and he's got that whole ethnically ambiguous thing, and he's just like super sweet, like, great guy, not a mean bone in his body, like he's a hero, it's...
Yeah, 6'5", 260, a solid muscle.
It's powerful.
Sweet guy.
It's powerful. But it does, I know that you're a big wrestling fan.
Oh, I am. I have been for many years.
It is fascinating to me how, say whatever you want, but it is such a perfect and beautiful drama, this eternal sort of the hero's journey, the narrative of the gods, because they're gods. It's the gods battling, and these stories that can carry on for years. That are decades.
Yep.
That are exquisitely drawn out, and these narratives and these individuals are really truly talented. And Jesse Ventura was a governor. You know what I mean?
Yep.
More and more wrestlers are running for office now.
Glenn Jacobs, the guy who
Glenn Jacobs. There's
plays
another
Kane.
one. Kane, yeah.
He actually just was elected mayor.
There you go.
Yeah. This is totally doable, and they do have their acting background to fall back on.
Yep. Right.
But talking about missing the moment, and I don't think any of us are going to miss the moment that The Rock is sworn into office, because he's going to say to Putin, I'm coming to Russia, if you smell what I'm cooking. It's going to be amazing.
Do you smell?
It's going to be a phenomenal moment. But it's like coming up through that and watching the Monday Night Wars between you had Raw and you had Monday Nitro from WCW, which no longer exists. Vince McMahon bought it after they went bankrupt.
Right.
It's like, there was a moment in time when on television all at the same time, we had Stone Cold, we had The Rock, we had Goldberg, we had Nash and Hall. We had like all these people that even people today who aren't all that into wrestling would recognize. Hogan
Know who
was
they
still
are.
on.
Yeah,
Hogan was still on at the time. Ric Flair was
Sting.
still on. Sting was still on. You had Randy Macho Man Savage.
Oh,
You had
God, yes.
all of these
Ultimate
iconic,
Warrior.
Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you had all of these icons that were active all at the same time. And then, you had the WrestleMania where you had The Rock versus Hogan.
Right,
And it was
right,
the match that nobody ever thought they
The
would see.
generational match.
Yeah,
Right.
and for 5 minutes they just stood in the ring and stared at each other, and the crowd was chanting Rocky, 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 and then the crowd would shift and they would chant Hogan, 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 and then they would shift back and chant Rocky, Rocky, Rocky.
See, there's something very deep and magical there that is it's a hearkening back and this sort of return back to, now, and the longer it goes on, the further back you go.
Yeah.
Right? Now we're in Rome and it's the gladiators. Now we're back in ancient Greece and it's we're watching the Olympics, like the original, like it's this ebb and flow of energy, of humanity. And I feel like these are the things that are unappreciated, that are not understood, but yet are the exact things that 200, 300, 400, 500 years will be the things that people care about the most.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like, it's not like Shakespeare at his time, in his time, with the Globe Theater. I mean, the Globe Theater held like 500 people. It's not like people were coming from all around Europe to come to the Globe Theater to see this wonderful Shakespeare. No, it was a local thing that was there. And maybe you had a few aristocrats who heard that this guy's got some kind of funny stuff and he does kind of some good things, and they would sit up in the... But you don't appreciate that. No, that's where the brilliance is.
Yeah. And it may not come again. And I think that's where people miss it, because when you're living through it, it's like, okay, this is the reality. This is what's happening right now. But you don't maybe think, like, maybe it won't exist in the future. Maybe I'll be sitting here in 10 years watching, the Ric Flair retirement match over and over and crying at the end because there aren't any good matches anymore.
Yeah. I saw a thing to that. Somebody posted on, it was a tweet that I saw today, and I was like, it took me a second. Like, I was looking at it and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. I wonder what that means right there. Like, that's a really interesting statement. It was the profile picture of Tom from MySpace. Remember? Sitting there in the white shirt with the look into the side, the little smile, right?
Yep.
And it was like, good old smiling Tom. Never shadow banned anybody. Never took down any content. Never did any sort of censorship whatsoever. We miss you, Tom. And it's just so interesting that it's like, oh, yeah, though. I mean, yeah. That forum, as crappy as it was, I mean, they let you control the HTML of your page. People had GIFs dancing around on their MySpace. It was a shit show. It was an absolute shit show. And it's so interesting that I remember, because I was in my software development career at sort of full bore at that point. I was actually working for startups in LA that were social media startups in this time before Facebook, when everybody was like when Facebook kind of went public, I was working at a startup that started out being called My AWOL, My Artist Without Leave, because everybody was doing My Something, right? And then it became LP33.TV. But the idea was like, it was MySpace meets SoundCloud. The craziest thing about it was we actually built SoundCloud. But
Wow. Did anybody ever get the LP33 reference?
I don't even know. It was pretty arcane, right?
Yeah,
it was
I know.
pretty
It's
arcane.
like, nobody under 50 would ever get
No,
that.
no. So it was interesting that they totally blew it. Like the social network was built. It was totally SoundCloud, audio and video. We were some of the first people to ever build a Facebook app. We had We had one of the first Android apps in the Android store. We even had a Nokia app, BlackBerry apps. Very strange.
BlackBerry, what's that?
Built by me, by the way.
Nice.
They really wanted to do like curated content. They were trying to compete with YouTube by making their own content. It was just all of these mistakes that, of course, that would seem legitimate to make at the time because you don't know what you're doing.
Sure.
But I remember Facebook moving from this sort of private walled garden that was only for universities and corporations and releasing into the public. And it was at the same time that MySpace was around. And one of the things was that it was like, oh, yeah, wait, everyone's profile looks the same? What is it? This doesn't even make any sense. Like, can you control anything? No.
No.
Can you change the way? No.
Nope.
Can you control? You can't make the little things. No. It was like, and feeds were new, right? They had just done it because in MySpace you didn't really have a feed. You kind of had a wall. That's what it was. People could write on your wall. On your wall. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like you had a feed where you could see
passive.
what other people were doing. Right. No, it was active. You had to go to somebody's wall.
Yeah.
But they could have their wall look like whatever they wanted their wall to look like.
Sure.
And if you didn't like what somebody put on your wall, you could take it off your wall. Mm-hmm. You could take it off.
But think about this. Think about the paradigm, right? It's an active versus passive paradigm. Mm-hmm. And people prefer, based on the market dominance of Facebook, they prefer passive. They prefer having their information fed to them automatically. And that then leads to the segregation of information that we're talking about with Twitter. You are literally being lied to every day of your life because you have information that is obscured because of an algorithm. There's an AI generated algorithm that determines what it thinks you're going to be interested in, along with an associated number of ads that it thinks you're going to be interested in.
That's right.
But unless you are purposefully going out there and seeking new knowledge, you are going to be, you're going to have your blinders on.
But I think that this is my worry. My worry is for the generation of my own children. And that is that they will never have lived in a world where their digital domain is not curated. And curated well. Because the thing is, these algorithms are just getting better. It's not like the algorithms are getting any worse. And so it's how much do you trust? How much do you trust these algorithms? And is there even any education for you to? I feel like that's the next step. Is there any education where you would feel that your own opinion was better than the algorithm? Like, I still feel that my opinion's better than the algorithm, and I feel like some of what we do here, and the reason why, to me, it's important that it's a live show, why it's important that it's obscure, occult, esoteric information, is it's not about the algorithm. It's not about you being told something. It's about you listen to the show. If there's something interesting that we say, then go find it.
Yeah. Because we're not giving answers.
Right.
We're
questions.
We're asking questions. We're setting up, hey, hey, there's this really cool, weird stuff that you might want to go check out because this isn't all there is to it, right? Like,
right. We're giving you a taste of it.
This is the appetizer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you can dig in and dig in and dig in.
Yeah, there's literally endless material out there about all of these things, including the further work that was done on the Lycurgus Cup and talking about the nanotechnology there. There are other examples of nanotechnology in the ancient world. Now, I'm not claiming that they understood nanotechnology, but they sure as hell used it, and there's proof.
Well, you don't have to understand a technology to use it. That's the idea.
Absolutely not.
No, that's the idea of embodying an idea before you can articulate the idea.
Right.
You have to use a concept before you can explain the concept.
Even in the example of the grandma with the flip phone and
Exactly.
the coin text, that's it.
You've embodied it. She doesn't even necessarily have to know what she just did. And in many ways, I mean, I teach these Code from Go. I teach these coding classes, and that's kind of how most of how it goes, because it's and you know this is often how it is when code is dropped in your lap, that it's like, okay, I don't first go through and read every line of code, right? If there's unit tests, that's fantastic. Maybe I'll alter some of those and see what happens. But otherwise, I'm going to run this code and I'm going to run it in some different scenarios and see what happens first. I'm going to embody it first and run the code first. And then I'm going to go back and be like, oh, that failed and there's an error there on this line. Okay, now I can start to understand what it does. It's like if you're trying to teach somebody, shooting, right? And you're going to be like, okay, well, how would you stand to shoot this gun? Well, you've got to even if it's just in your mind, you've got to hold the gun and stand in a position and then observe yourself doing it.
This is why one of the most effective ways to teach somebody something is to have them teach it to somebody else.
Right.
And this is actually a technique that's used to teach children like potty training. So you can potty train a child very quickly by having them teach a doll or a younger sibling.
Very good. I like that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, now teach the doll how to go potty, and then they teach, but doing that exact thing that you just talked about, because then they have to internalize it so that they can then tell their doll, like, okay, here's how you go potty. Then they do it, and it's
right.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
Yeah, you have to embody before you can articulate, because you have to observe yourself doing something.
Yep.
This is, I feel that when we reach a point, and I think we are reaching this point, but I don't know, again, this is the dim age. The dim age is something new. The new age of magic is something new. I don't know whether this is the potential split into maybe it's a split again into the sort of Eloi, Morlock. I see it happening. I feel like we've been living in a very egalitarian age for a couple of generations.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there hasn't been there hasn't been a literate class who has unquestioned authority due to their knowledge. That hasn't existed for a long time, I feel like.
It's probably good, because that really should have never existed. But,
But I feel like it's almost a foregone conclusion, because I feel like there are certain individuals who are just certainly who are just going to have no interest in this all has to be maintained.
Yeah.
This has to be maintained.
But we've been well trained to replace it every 2 years.
But somebody's got to build the fucker. and over time, the number of people who are able to build the fucker, by the way, I'm holding up a phone for those people who are on the podcast.
Yes.
A mobile phone. The number of people who are able to build this is steadily getting less and less.
I would challenge you
the number of people who can even grow food is growing less and less.
I would challenge you that there is nobody on the planet who could build one by themselves.
Sure. No, absolutely not.
Nobody.
I'd agree.
And I don't care how much equipment you give them. You know, it's not a matter of, oh, you can't have just one person operate all the pieces of equipment, blah, blah. No one person has all the knowledge in their brain to build that thing, regardless of the resources they
And
have.
that's why we are in some tenuous times.
Right.
Because the further segmented that gets, the more the chances that there's one company that manufactures a certain critical part.
Well, there's already one company we get all our news from, one
Right.
company we get, I mean, literally, you know, it's like everything is consolidating involuntarily into places we don't want it to be.
Right. Yeah, that is the Library at Alexandria.
Yeah. And that's why knowledge keeps getting lost. And that's why we are, you know, we're in a dim age. Are we headed for a dark age?
I don't think so. No, I don't. And I'll tell you the reason why. I think that if anything, what will come out of the dim age is a more economical view of what is needed to sustain human life. And I think that from out of that dim age will be, I think that ideal, the ideal that, okay, here's the package that is human life, right? I think that's a very strong package. I think that's the hard times that create strong men. I think that the individuals who come out of the dim age with this package of essentials for human life are going to be the ones that will take humanity to Mars and the asteroid belt, probably the moons of Jupiter, and start that portion of human existence.
Okay.
Because I think that's the next portion. I think it's Mars. I think it's the asteroid belt. I think it's the moons of Jupiter, and that's maybe the next 2,000-3,000 years.
You know what's funny is that as I have had experiences and gotten older, I started out life very scientifically minded. I was a smart kid. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wrote letters to NASA. I was that kid.
Same with me. Yeah, I was that guy too.
Yeah. So, but now, like, you know, I'd rather grow carrots and pound metal and, you know, make cool looking things out with my hands.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a lot of that on Mars.
Yeah, see, it sounds
They're
like a long
need
trip.
they're gonna need
Yeah.
carrot growers, and they're gonna need metal pounders. Oh, it's not gonna be me, sir. It's not gonna be me. Our generation is going to be, you know, one of the last to really get to enjoy Earth in the way that it is, I think.
Well, yeah, and, you know, keep in mind, I mean, the very first priority has to be setting up a government. That way we can make sure that Mars, you know, the natural resources are protected, any indigenous life forms, you know, have their rights, and, you know, we want to leave no trace.
I think
when we're on Mars.
the most wonderful thing about Mars colonization is that it 100% will not be government run. I think that's pretty much, we can pretty much guarantee that.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah,
Really?
I think so.
I'll bet you $1.
All right. Well, if Elon Musk keeps tweeting while on acid, then you may very well win that.
Is
bet.
his
Yeah,
deal
yeah,
with
I
that
don't know.
guy? Like, God, leave it alone, dude. Jeez.
Yeah.
I don't know his deal, man. It's weird.
I mean, I think you can. You know, he's so I read his biography. It's the authorized biography. He's always wanted to go to Mars. That's his thing.
Okay.
And all of these companies, everything that he's doing has been to go to Mars. And I think something happened in the last couple of years where, you know, I think he was able to really stay humble and he was able to really keep his eye on the prize. But I think you reach a certain point where, I mean, he's definitely got the means to be able to just do just about anything.
For sure.
That he wants to do.
Which makes his tweets make even less sense.
Well, and he's incredibly famous.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly famous individual. You know, that's super distracting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he still wants to go to Mars, but it's like, I think you reach that point and it's like this constant thing where you have to keep checking yourself, because it's like, how much more as a human being, like how much more successful, how much higher on the social hierarchy could you possibly be in 2018 than Elon Musk?
Maybe not any higher, but is that his goal?
This is the big question.
Right.
Right? Because you think, well, is my goal really going to Mars, or is my goal like every other hairless ape on this planet to be at the top of the social hierarchy?
Or is it to have a life of significance, right? Mm-hmm. That's really what it's all about.
That's what I would like to see from Elon Musk. And I think, unfortunately, that's the problem that arises when you've set a goal for yourself that is external.
Correct.
To yourself.
Yes. You cannot have an external locus of validation.
That's right.
Have to be genuinely okay, like within yourself. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to like learn that. But once I learned it, it was like, wow, I genuinely do not give a crap what 99.999% of the world thinks. I'm going to do what I think is fun, what I like to do, and I'm going to be with the people that I want to be with.
Well, and you want to grow.
And you want to, you watch wrestling? Yeah, I watch wrestling. Like, you wouldn't believe the number of people that try to look down their nose at me, and then they eventually admit that they've watched some wrestling.
But they also don't get it, because anybody who you talk to anybody who knows anything about psychology, sociology, especially anybody who's studied Joseph Campbell or more recently Jordan Peterson, if you don't understand the context of wrestling, you don't understand the culture in which you're living.
Oh, absolutely true. And that has always been the case, because there have always been gladiator style competitions. Always.
That's right.
And I have released all of my like emotional attachments to what other people think about things. And that has actually served me pretty well over the last few years. I legitimately don't care. Like, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to channel my inner child and get all geeky freaky about, arrows with a rocket strapped to them, because I think it's friggin' super cool. And if nobody else in the world likes it, okay, whatever. I still had fun doing it. And that's the way that I think people should really refocus. Everybody's so worried about what everybody else is going to think. And, oh my God, I got to put this on Facebook and it's got to be just perfect. And my grammar's got to be right and blah, 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 blah. Who fucking cares? Like, get off of Facebook.
Right.
Like, go do something meaningful. Signal, right? Like,
yes.
Have a life of significance. Do something meaningful. Be meaningful to the people that you care about, and quit worrying so much about what people think.
I think that is so important, because those are the individuals who are going to value the place that they're at, who are going to see that there is some significance in what they're doing, and that, look, these moments are going to be very, very interesting to our descendants.
For sure.
And it's the genuine moments. Those are the ones. It's not the moment spent doing what everyone else in the culture is doing. Because that's just a one sentence in the history book.
Right.
Right. What's interesting is that quirky thing that stands out, that truly says, like, oh, okay, this is an example of this is a thread of the culture of that time. And I think those are the only people that can foster innovation. But it's what we're doing. It's here, and it's 10.
Oh my God, really? Seriously? Like, okay.
2 hours.
No. Obviously, there is some kind of time distortion field that occurs around this studio, because there's no way it's been 2 hours. No way.
Well, 2 bottles of wine helps. So, thank you once again to Bitcoin Jerry French.
Yes, Jerry, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave, for wonderful show.
Oh,
Cheers to you.
Cheers to you, my friend.
Did something come up in this conversation that would, we talked about the Voynich manuscript. I don't know if we want to do that next week. I'm not really, I don't know.
I think next week might be genuinely unknown.
Oh, the destination is unknown. I'm sure we'll figure it out during the week. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We will see you again next week for another 2 hours of Destination Unknown.